Welcome back, Axis and Allies players, straight from the nest. It's Wars of the World, Series 3, the Napoleonic Wars. NATO's going to lead us through this introduction and through all of our scenarios. Take it away, NATO, and show us how it's done.
Hello everybody, this is NATO at the Nest with the first half of the 1811 turn of the Napoleonic Wars. And England decided to go south for Madrid, and then that was his only combat action. So went south for Madrid, rolled really good, was able to reduce the French forces down to 1 infantry. And then England loaded up its transport and landed its London forces in Portugal to, guarantee France couldn't take Portugal and knock it out of the war. Obvious plus side to that is Portugal is still very much in the war and not in any danger of collapse at the moment. The downside is it takes those transports out of position to reinforce the forces going after Madrid. It'll take a full turn to get back to England, and then another turn to load up and come back down to northern Spain, so it's going to be 2 full turns before those Madrid forces can get reinforced. But that large French army right there, with Portugal, guaranteed to stay in the war, that French army right there is tied up and fighting in Portugal and away from Madrid. So that was still not entirely sure if that was the right thing to do, but as they say in the military, doesn't matter if you go left, go right, just make a decision and stick with it. So we'll see what the consequences of that are. Spain, and then, sorry, England moved 2 frigates, where is it? There it is. England moved 2 frigates down into the Mediterranean and moved another frigate down to cover those transports, and then that was its unit placement: 2 infantry and a cavalry. Spain moved its first purchase, up Central America to get in position to attack the Mexican rebels, and then bought a 3rd transport, and then 2 cavalry and 2 cannon. So Spain still hasn't tipped its hand what it's going to do. Bought a 3rd transport, and then a lot of high firepower units for this scenario. So Spain still hasn't tipped its hand whether it's going to go up Central America or use those transports to hit the west coast or not. And then that was all Spain did. Russia, it just moved west, cover the Baltics, to cover the threat of Sweden landing somewhere in Russian territory. So it still can't purchase anything, so that was its only move. Let's see, Prussia, in regards to that delaying action, Prussia bought nothing but militia and put it in Stettin. And was it 5? Yeah, 5. They bought 5 militia, put it in Stettin. Yeah, and that was it for Prussia. Not much they can do. They're kind of on the verge of collapse from France. Prussia needs Russia to come back to their side sooner rather than later. Otherwise, Prussia's going to fall, and there's not going to be much England can do against France without, a strong continental power to help them out. But we're one turn away from Russia switching sides again, so as long as Prussia can hold out for 2 more turns, they'll have the help they desperately need. So hopefully that they can hold out long enough. France, it took that massive army right there, attacked Stettin, and that French cannon is really hurting the Allies, because that French cannon killed 4 out of the 5 militia, and as you remember, the French researched the first strike capability, so 4 of the 5 militia stationed in Stettin were killed immediately before they could even return fire. So that left only 1 militia that could shoot back, and so that French cannon with that first strike capability is really paying off, and is really causing the Allies a lot of grief. The other attack was they attacked Portugal, mainly to keep that that sizable British army right there from moving east and interfering with anything in central Spain. They attacked Portugal knowing that they wouldn't take it, like I said, is mostly just to tie down that British force there so it couldn't reinforce the British Madrid forces. The French took 2 frigates and came out to Mediterranean and challenged that British fleet, 2 British frigates there. And the British came out on top, sank both French frigates for a loss of their own. And that was the action for France. It just moved more forces down to Spain to reinforce. And then, those forces just conquered Stettin, so next is to go into West Poland, take it back from Sweden. As remember, Russia originally took it. Then, I totally skipped over Sweden. My bad. Okay, so Sweden loaded up that transport and took Western Poland back, which was undefended, and then France's turn. Apologies. So France's next move is moving to Western Poland, and then East Prussia, and hopefully knock Prussia out of the war before Russia gets involved. And then its purchases, France produced as much as it could out of the Madrid factory to reinforce. It was originally down to just 1 infantry, so it poured 3 infantry, cavalry, and a cannon out of the Madrid factory to reinforce. So it wouldn't fall to British forces, not unless England rolls stupidly good next turn. Let's see. And then France put the remainder of its production capacity in Berlin. So, 2 infantry, 2 cavalry, and a cannon. And then, where to go? Another frigate off the Italian coast. And France is producing frigates out of Italy, mostly 2 reasons. One, it forces the British to sail their ships all the way around to engage the French, and so it takes British ships, far away from England, forces them to make a really long trek to, reinforce ships lost in the Mediterranean. And so, when the time comes, not that France and America are allies, or that the 1812 war has any effect on anything, but it does help out the Americans slightly when that war kicks off by thinning British frigate strength in the Atlantic. But the main reason why France is producing ships out of Italy is because the factories closer to England are reserved for ground troop production, which it needs a lot more than it needs ships. France is producing frigates out of Italy more, not necessarily out of need, but more just to harass and keep the British buying ships and not buying troops, because the plus side to England being an island nation is it's easy to defend. The downside to England being an island nation is it makes its ability to project power solely on very expensive ships. It could have the largest army in the world, but because it's an island, if it doesn't have the ships to project that power, in terms of global power, it has nothing. So the more France is forcing England to spend on ships to maintain naval superiority, the less they can spend on ground troops, which is the key factor in the war right now. Spain and Central Europe and Eastern Europe. And so that's why it's continuing to produce frigates, and the reason why it's producing them in Italy is it needs the factories closer to home for ground troops, especially when Russia gets involved. You can see Russia has a very large army, and France is going to need every factory it can to produce as many troops as it can, especially depending on how this British invasion of Spain goes. France is looking at having to fight a two-front war very soon. A very large, powerful Russia in the east, and a less powerful England, but still powerful in its own right on the west. So it's going to need every ground troop it can to fight two major fronts on opposite ends of Europe. Let's see. America was able to purchase its first unit, because it rolled a 4 last time, so that was enough to buy a cavalry. It rolled a 3 this time, so American production is now up to 7. And that's about all America did. In Mexico, what did it do? It bought 2 infantry, artillery, or a cannon and a cavalry, and put them in Mexico because that's its only factory. We'll see next turn if that all stays there or if it moves west. That'll probably be dependent on what Spain does with that transport. If Spain loads up a transport and sends troops and lands them in the west somewhere, some of those Mexican units might peel off and head west. Or if Spain just tries to do a brute force, smash tactic up the peninsula, those will probably stay put. So what Mexico does is heavily dependent on what Spain does. So we'll see next turn exactly what Spain does. And so that is it for the turn. I'll come back next video with the second half of 1811 and see what happens. Thanks for watching. See you then. Hello everybody, this is NATO at the Nest with the second half of the 1811 turn of the Napoleonic Wars. And England, perfectly frank, England had a shitty turn this turn. England attacked. England had a fight with the French in the Mediterranean, resulted in the destruction of both ships, and then England attacked the French in Portugal, and that was a complete disaster. They only managed to get 1 or 2 hits on the French, and the French got 4 or 5 hits on the British. So that was a total disaster for the British in Portugal. And then the British attacked Madrid, and both sides only got 1 hit apiece. So one hit for the British, 1 hit for the French. So while not a disaster, was definitely a letdown. England was obviously hoping for much better hits, to reduce the French garrison and try to get something going in Spain. And that was it for combat-wise for England. England bought another frigate and bought 2 more infantry and a cannon, so it can land another sizable, fill those 3 transports and land another sizable force somewhere. And that was it for England. It's just got to continue trying to fight in Spain, and hope when Russia enters, or it's already entered, when Russia switches sides again, that Russia can divert enough French forces away from Spain to open up a window for England to seriously get something going in Spain. Because right now it's a kind of a losing battle for them. Spain, still just building up its forces and getting them to the front. Its first batch of soldiers has finally gotten to the Mexican border, and it's built up a quite sizable army in Venezuela, and due to the fact that Spain hasn't been moving them up Central America, it's pretty obvious that Spain has earmarked those units to be loaded on the transports and landed somewhere, on the west coast. So that's looking like what Spain's gearing up to do. So Spain and the Mexican rebels haven't actually fought yet, but I'll probably change next video. Russia didn't do anything this turn because they can't build anything, and they've run out of places that they can fight. They can't actually invade Swedish home country. They can only invade what will become Finland. Prussia just bought as much militia as they can in preparation for all those French forces. Sweden just bought an infantry because that's all they can afford. So kind of quick turn, not a lot happening. England and France are the only ones really fighting at this moment. France, it counterattacked in Portugal and reduced the Allied British and Portuguese army down to 2 British units and 1 Portuguese unit. The French tried attacking in Madrid, and let's see what that was. 2 French casualties for 1 British, I believe. So relatively even there. And then they attacked and took Western Poland, but that was a given. There's 3 Swedish infantry there versus all that, so it's no big surprise that that territory was taken. So, you know, that's the last barrier between them and Prussia's capital. So next turn we'll probably see the fight for Prussia's survival. And then let's see, that was all of France's combat. And France just maxed out its production in the Berlin factory and the Madrid factory, and moved down the last batch of troops from Paris to northern Spain. And let's see, France bought another frigate, you know, to continue draining British resources. I believe that was all France did. Bought 2 cavalry, put it in the Austria factory. Portugal just bought an infantry and put it in Portugal, try to beef up the defenses. See, America bought a infantry and a cannon, and then on its production roll only rolled a 1, so America got $8 this turn. And Mexico, it bought 2 infantry, cavalry, and a cannon. The risk pieces we're using only comes with 6 colors, so I'm having to use some Axis and Allies pieces. These particular pieces are the neutral molds from historicalboardgaming.com. So the truck, which in the World War II scenario would be considered mechanized infantry, that's considered, you know, cavalry for this scenario purposes. So Mexico just took some forces from its capital and moved it to the Pacific side of Mexico, gearing up and anticipating a probable amphibious landing by Spain, for reasons mentioned earlier, and then put down a cavalry, cannon, and 2 infantry that they purchased into the Atlantic side of Mexico. And that was the turn. Pretty quick turn. Not a whole lot of fighting. It's just England and mostly just England and France fighting. Most of it in Spain, a little bit in the Eastern Europe side, with France taking Western Poland. But most of the fighting in Spain, in the Portugal, Madrid area. A little bit of naval fighting in the Mediterranean. So, fairly simple turn, fairly quick turn. Next turn, it's going to escalate yet again, because next turn is the first half of 1812, and that's when England and America go to war, and Russia switches sides again, so England's going to get its powerful ally in the east back, and I will probably be, if England is going to win this scenario, it's going to be Russian help that's going to be the key. Right now France is winning quite handedly, but so the hope of British victory lies in Russia. So next turn Russia switches sides again, and it'll become a British ally again, and then like I stated, America goes to war with England, and keep in mind it's a completely separate war. Has absolutely no effect on the war with France and Napoleon. So it has its own victory conditions. Like I said, they're separate from France. So next turn we'll have 3 different wars going on simultaneously, all of them completely independent of each other, and all 3 of them having their own separate victory conditions. So it's getting crazy. So we'll end it there, and we'll come back with a new year, 1812, a new war, and another escalation to this already very large and very long and bloody conflict. So thank you for watching. We'll see you then.
Hey, thanks for watching Axis and Allies players. Don't forget to hit a squat on that like button. If you'd like to see more videos just like this, go ahead and click on our subscribe button. You can view all of our other videos on our playlists right here on Viper and NATO, straight from the nest, coming at you from historical board games, Z-Man Games, Parker Brothers, Hasbro, and Wizards of the Coast. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next round.